2020, Impact on My Business as an SME. My name is Ayodele Okupai, and I work with the Legal Services Department of FirstBank of Nigeria Limited. This webinar is brought to you by SMEConnect, an online platform that houses FirstBank's value propositions for SMEs. At FirstBank, our promise to SMEs is based on 7 pillars. We promise to connect SMEs to market, finance, capacity building, infrastructure, resources, talent for business development, and to provide information on policies and regulations that impact their businesses. Please check smeconnect.firstbanknigeria.com for these connections. President Muhammad Buhari on Friday, the 7th of August, 2020, assented to the Companies and Allied Matters Act of 2020, which was recently passed by the National Assembly. After 30 years, the 2020 CAMA repeals the earlier Act of 1990 and its amendments in 2004. This is a welcome development in the Nigerian corporate and commercial business industry, as the Act introduces an overall improvement in the areas of incorporation of companies, limited liability partnerships, limited partnerships, registration of business names, the incorporation of trustees of certain communities, bodies, associations, and other related matters. The objective of this webinar is to highlight the amendments that have been made to CAMA and to evaluate its impact on SMEs. We will provide attendees with helpful tips to ensure that they are familiar with these amendments and are able to understand how it applies to their own businesses. We will also provide insights into how attendees can have access to and benefit from the wide-ranging benefits that have been introduced under CAMA. With me to deliberate on this topic and answer any questions you may have are our distinguished panelists. They are all renowned legal practitioners and experts in their various fields. However, before I introduce them, please note that we have collated the questions asked during the registration exercise and will be posing them to our panelists. We will also take questions from this live session. So to ask a question, kindly use the Q&A tab located at the bottom of your screen. If you are attending as anonymous, please tell us your name and your location when asking your question. For example, you can say, my name is Ayodele Okupai and I'm calling from Victoria Island, Lagos. Now, it's time to introduce you to our experts for the day. So first off, we have Dr. Jumoke Oduwole. Dr. Jumoke Oduwole is the special advisor to the president on ease of doing business. Until her reappointment in August 2019, Dr. Oduwole was Senior Special Assistant to the President on Industry, Trade, and Investment in the Office of the Vice President from October 2015 to May 2019. She is Secretary to the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC, chaired by Vice President Professor Yemi Oshibajo, SAN, GCON, and coordinates the activities of its secretariat with a vision to make Nigeria a progressively easier place to do business. Among other notable achievements, her team is responsible for Nigeria moving up an unprecedented 39 places in the World Bank's flagship Doing Business report in 3 years, and being named twice in 3 years among the top 10 most improved economies of the world. Prior to 2015, Dr. Oduwole was a senior lecturer in international trade law at the Faculty of Law, University of Lagos, and an elected member of the university's Senate after a career in the Nigerian banking sector. Dr. Oduwole holds an LLM degree from Cambridge University, England, as well as a second master's and a doctorate degree in international trade and development from Stanford Law School, USA. The second panelist is Israel Aye. Israel is the senior partner energy and commercial transactions at Primera Africa Legal. He is also the founder of mylaw.ng, a virtual platform for legal services. Israel has extensive commercial and legal knowledge of the oil and gas business in Nigeria. In addition to his role at Primera Africa Legal, he is the director at the Aspen Energy Nigeria Energy Services and Consulting Group and a faculty member of the International Law Institute African Center of Excellence. Israel has been named by Who's Who Legal Annual Ratings as one of the world's leading experts in energy and natural resources legal practice consecutively since 2012. Israel was called to the Nigerian bar in 1993 and holds Bachelor's of Laws LLB honors. He is an accredited mediator, Center for Effective Dispute Resolution UK, and a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators UK, the Nigerian chapter. Last but not least is Oluropo Okumuide. So Oluropo holds a bachelor's degree in law from the Obafemi Awolowo University, a master's degree in law from the University of Lagos, and a barrister's at law degree from the Nigerian Law School. He is a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators London and an honorary senior member of the Chartered Institute of Bankers Nigeria. Oluropo has 25 years experience in corporate legal practice and has acquired extensive experience in different aspects of banking-related legal services. Prior to joining FirstBank, he served as a state counsel in the Directorate of Public Prosecutions, Lagos State, and acquired experience in private legal practice. Oluropo has held various leadership roles in the Legal Services Department of FirstBank for more than a decade and was previously the head, Security Documentation and Management Unit. In his current role as head, Litigation and Legal Advisory Services, he leads a team of young and vibrant lawyers with responsibilities for managing the bank's litigation portfolio and rendering day-to-day legal opinions and advisory services to the bank. So on this note, I welcome our panelists to this webinar. You're most welcome.
Thank you, Ayo.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
We have received over 1,000 questions on this topic and have selected the following questions to enable us to evaluate the impact of CAMA on SMEs and to provide necessary tips for assessing and applying the benefits inherent in the amendments to your businesses. So let's jump right in. The opening question goes to Israel Aye. And without further ado, Israel, of the many improvements in CAMA, which in your opinion is the most beneficial to SMEs?
Okay, thank you very much. You know, the biggest winner, as far as I'm concerned, and I don't know if you can hear me, please do confirm if you can, but the biggest winner in the updated CAMA is really and truly small businesses, you know, and it's difficult to pick out say what's by far the most impactful provision, in the sense that the combination of all the adjustments that have been made, makes doing business for small businesses easy. And this ranges from the ease of incorporation, the fact now that you can register partnerships as a separate legal entity, because again, there are many businesses that don't necessarily want to, or people who practice as a partnership, you know, but would want to operate under the construct of the LLP, the Limited Liability Partnership. That didn't exist in our corporate legal framework previously. It now exists, all the way to the provisions around, you know, how to, the fact that definition of what a small business is in the law today, that didn't exist. So it means that conceptually we didn't have, we didn't recognize the, the small business. Today, the law recognizes the small business, defines it, and then provides a variety of, makes a variety of provisions.
Okay, thank you very much, Israel. We'll come back to Israel. For now, we'll move to the next question. We'll go to Oluropo while we wait for Israel to join us. So, Oluropo, what are the major highlights of the amendments to CAMA?
Thank you, Ayo. The Newcomer has 870 sections. So it's a very voluminous law, but I'll concentrate on, because this seminar is for SMEs, and I'll concentrate on things that concern SME more. Now, the major highlights of this law, of this new law, is that it has made things, talking literally now, easier for SMEs. Now, it has the effect of enhancing the ease of doing business, enhancing the ease of doing business in terms of simpler processes, reduction of turnaround time, and reduction of costs. It has also enabled businesses to leverage on technology. We say that technology is the enabler of business. It enables the business to leverage on technology to make things easier and also promote transparency. So quickly, because of time, I go to specific provisions of the Act, which have made things easier, sort of for businesses. Now, it's easier, faster, and cheaper now to form a company. Now, the first thing is that before now, you need 2 shareholders to form a company. The law now says you can have only one individual being the sole shareholder of the company. Now, we know that most of the startups and small businesses are one-man company in the real sense. So what happens is that you just go and look for somebody who is not really part of your business and make him a shareholder just to fulfill a legal requirement. Now, that barrier has been removed. So I foresee that a number of sole proprietorships will now become limited liability companies because that barrier has been removed. Now, like I said, this law has also leveraged so much on technology. Now, a lot of things that you have to do physically and print out hard copies, you can now do them using electronically. Now, filing when you want to register a company, now you can register it from your room on your computer without even leaving your house. So you can do things because you can now file your papers, your forms electronically. Now, you can also do it alone. Before now, under the law, you cannot do it alone because there's what we call statutory declaration of compliance, which requires that a legal practitioner must sign. And if that form is not there, CAC will not register your company. Now the law says that has been removed. And in place of that, we have the statements of compliance, which you can sign yourself or get somebody who is probably your agent to sign. So that has been removed. That also has reduced costs. Because for small businesses and probably somebody who has just finished your service, who is starting up a business, he may not be able to afford the professional fees of a lawyer. Now, in terms of documentation, it has also helped you to do what we call articles of association. You can now use a model form. So you don't even need to write it yourself. The law says that the CAC, the minister through the CAC can prescribe forms. Now, like Israel said earlier, you also have more options for registering for your business. You don't have to do just one. If, for example, it's a partnership, you have a few partners, you can register a limited partnership or a limited liability partnership, which allow you to separate yourself from your business, what we call separate legal personality. The advantage of this is that you may just have somebody who's just bringing money in, but doesn't want to be part of the business. He doesn't want, if there's debt, he doesn't want to be part of it. So his liability is limited to what he's bringing in. Then you have some general partners who are actually the people running the business. So there's a lot of these flexibilities which have been introduced to make things easier. In terms of running a company, I'll just run through a few more. A small company, as defined by Israel earlier, can now have just one director. Before now, the requirement was that every company must have 2 directors. And a one-man company has to go and bring somebody who's probably not part of that company and make him a director for that purpose. But you don't have to do that anymore. Now, for small companies and a company with 1 shareholder, you don't have to hold annual general meeting. Before it was compulsory for every company, but now you don't have to hold it anymore. For private companies, whether it's small or not, you can now hold your meeting electronically. So you can see the cost saving, you can see the convenience that is introduced through that. Everybody can stay in his house, and then all of you connect, like we are doing now, connecting with several hundreds of people and have your meeting. There's a lot of convenience. Filing can now be done electronically. All the things you need to file at CAC, you can file them electronically. The law now recognizes electronic signatures, which means that documents which in the past had to be signed physically, you can actually use electronic signatures. Now, notices of meetings can also be sent to email addresses of people. Maybe maybe as we go, I'll write a lot more of these changes. There's still so many more. The point really is that the law has made the forming, registering, setting up of a company or a legal entity, and even meeting the regulatory requirements and running that company much easier, much cheaper, and also more convenient. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oluroko, for that erudite response to that question. So you've had it all. CAMA has made it easier, cheaper, and quicker to get your companies registered. So I'll go back to Israel. So there's a question here. They're asking if it's possible to change the status of a registered enterprise, a business name, to a limited liability company with 1 owner. So this would be a company that was registered, a business name that was registered under the old regime, and they're now trying to convert from being just the business name to a limited liability company with just the 1 owner. So please throw some light on this. Thank you.
Okay. Generally, it was always possible to convert or to transform a registered business name into a limited liability company. But like Oluroko said, that would then have that would have meant that you went from just being a very simple one-man run business to then a complex, 2 directors or multiple directors run business. Today, you can just do that step change and transform your registered business name into a limited liability company with only you as the shareholder and the director. And all the wonderful innovations that have been introduced as highlighted to us by Oluroko in his, again, and I join you to say in his erudite elucidation of what it is. And this is not meant to confuse anybody. Yeah, so in a nutshell, yes, you could, but you can't do it even simpler now. without any necessary requirement to bring somebody else to join you if you do not intend to.
Thank you very much, Israel. Okay, so the answer is clear. It is possible to make this change, to change the status of your business from a business name to a limited liability company under the Newcomer. Okay, so the next question will go to Oluroko. Rocco, what is CAMA's impact on company ownership and bank signatories? Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we've dwelled so much on this. CAMA's impact on company ownership is that it's easier, like I said earlier, for businesses to own companies, to transform into companies. Now, if you presently have a sole proprietorship, most of the things that prevent you from wanting to be a sole proprietorship have been removed. Those requirements have been made lesser, and therefore you can actually own a company. So I expect that, and I think CAC has a lot of work to do, that there will be a lot of more companies that will emerge as this law takes full effect. When this law takes effect, people will want to take advantage of this of these innovations. So my answer, direct question to that, to the first part of that question, is that yes, there will be more companies and there will be more people owning companies, and that is also very good for the economy, because a lot of people are presently in the informal sector of the economy. We move to the formal sector, and that affects a lot of things, access to finance and so many other things. The other question has to do with signatures or thereabouts. Generally, there are a lot of provisions that has to do with signatures in the new law. Now, and like I said, and now electronic signatures are recognized by the law. That is just keeping up to date with technology, because most correspondence and documentation are now being done through technology. So the law has recognized electronic signature. So if you sign a document electronically, and you can use it in court, it is authentic, it is as good as if you actually sat down and signed it with your ink or with your biro. The law has also removed the requirement that was in the old act to prove company seal on documents signed by a company. Under the old law, the requirement is that an important document, I don't want to use legal terms, an important document signed by a company should be signed by the director, by two directors, or by a director and the company secretary. Now, the law says now, and then they have to put what they call a common seal against it. Now, the law has dispensed with the need to use common seal. Now, for small countries and companies with a single shareholder, it's now allowed for you to have a single director, and because of that, that also means that that single director can sign. It may be with a witness, so you don't need two directors or a director and company secretary to sign for such a company. So these are some of the innovations that have been introduced by the new law with regard to signature of documents by companies, which has also made enhance the ease of doing business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oluroko. Thank you very much for that. So we're going to go back to Israel. And this question really is a request for clarification. So what they're saying now is that small businesses, small companies do not need a company secretary. And we're trying to ascertain what exactly characterizes a small company. How do you know that this is a small company? Is it a question of numbers, or Please speak to us on that, Israel. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, and I believe that Loracos mentioned it a couple of times as well, is for the first time we have a specific and formal definition of what a small business is. Even though we're familiar with the concept of the MSME, but you know, the question has always been, how do you, what are the thresholds for defining an MSME? Is it earning? Is it size? Is it turnover? And whatever else. But Section 394, and there's no, just in case people want to check, you know, 3B does describe it as a private company whose turnover is not more than 120 million in one year, and whose net assets is not in, more than 60 million naira. So you see that that's a very wide band of businesses that qualify as small businesses, I mean, under the CAMA.
Okay, thank you very much, Israel. So it's pretty clear now. If your turnover is less than 120 million, you're a small company, and we look forward to seeing you get bigger. Okay, so I'll go back to Loroko. How does business registration affect access to finance?
Even I want to hear that. Okay, but I think that's a very good question. The business registration, let me put it this way, that the new Act has also enhanced not only business registration, but by enhancing business registration, it has also enhanced the access to finance. And what I mean is that, what are the hindrances to access to finance? One major one is lack of legal structure. A lot of businesses are not able to access finance because they don't have a structure. And they don't have a structure because they don't have a legal entity through which they can access finance. A lot of lenders will want to see that you are well organized, that you are a legal entity, that you have financial statements, that you have projections and all that. Now, by making it easier, and as we keep saying, to form a company, that means that more businesses will form companies, and by forming companies, they find it easier to access finance. So the first one, of course, is the fact that it makes you easier for you to form companies. Number two is also the issue of cost. One major hindrance to access to finance is also cost, which is the cost of doing business, and the cost of accessing loans. The law has also tried to address this by reducing the fees that you pay when you are filing charges. Charges means that the security that you create, the collateral that you create over an asset, which you give to the bank when you are borrowing money, or give to a lender when you are borrowing money. Now, the law requires that such charges should be registered as CAC. Now, what this law has done is to reduce the fees. Before now, it was 1% of the amount, which is 10,000 for every 1 million. But what the law has done is to reduce it to 0.35% of the amount, which is now about 3,500. As a matter of fact, what he has done is to make that the maximum, which means that it's still within the discretion of the Corporate Affairs Commission to even reduce it further, but cannot review it upward. So that reduction itself will make it easier for people to take loans because the cost of funds will be reduced. And I guess the third one is, if I can just extend it to that, is lack of collateral. A lot of people cannot access loan because of lack of collateral. Now, you must also understand that this law it's all about ease of doing business. There are a lot of other complementary laws that are being made at the same time or to also serve the same purpose. I am aware that there is the secure transaction in movable assets part, which tends to allow movable assets to be used as security. Now, when you combine all these laws together, what you achieve is easier access to finance by small companies and SMEs. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oluroko. Thank you very much. I think what is clear is that you have to be registered to be in a position to be able to access finance. So registration is key. So I'm going to go back to Israel. And can you guide us, Israel, through the steps of registering the company under CAMA? So I'm an SME, or I want to establish an SME, and I want to actually register. Can you guide us through the steps how to register a company under CAMA?
Well, so one of the innovations that CAMA indeed had introduced prior to this, that the CAC, not CAMA now, even prior to the amendment of the CAMA, one of the innovations that CAC had introduced is, in fact, the online registration, which is, again, like most online facilities, is supposed to be self-directing, if you will. Generally, it begins by reserving the name or searching and reserving the name. So, and that's under 1,000 naira, I think about 600 and something naira that it costs. And all payments are made online, by the way. And so you can go online by yourself and ensure that the name you want to register, incorporate as the case may be, is available. And once you go through that process, and then it gives you a form, an online form, which you would fill. It used to be a requirement to download it, sign it, and scan it back to them. But with the amendment to the CAMA, I believe that the corresponding adjustment in technology will be made to enable online signature and making it a lot simpler. But that said, I should say that as an operator myself, and we handle this for several people, I think the site can be improved, and this is a technology thing now, not a law. I think the technology can be improved to make it a lot user-friendly, and I don't know if it's a critical comment. If you go to, some of the very notable sites, I don't know if you've ever had to call a line on Google or Facebook to report, and that's because there's a lot of data that is made available, on the how-to and the rest of it. And I think that the CAC site, which has responsibility for implementing the online registration, can improve to make it a lot easier. Unfortunately, many people who need to register still run to lawyers because there's not a lot of information online to guide them through. I don't know if this is helpful in any way. So there's a portal. Unfortunately, I didn't get that, but there's a portal which allows you to reserve the name. All payments are online. I can assure you that that's the case. You no longer need to go anywhere and pay and show any evidence. And it is supposed to be self-directed in that sense.
Thank you very much, Israel. Thank you for that response. So I think this is pretty clear. You can do it all on your own online. However, if you need assistance, please do not hesitate to contact a lawyer to assist you further. Okay, thank you very much, Israel. So I'll go back to Oluroko. Oluroko, how has CAMA, the 2020 CAMA, how has it made remitting annual returns to CAC? How has it made it easier for SMEs?
Okay, thank you, Ayo. Well, I think the first thing I should say is that annual returns are those filings, those forms, reports that you need to give to CAC as a company and it's done once a year. It's a requirement of the law that you should file it. CAC wants to be aware that your company is actively in operation. So those returns is what we let CAC know that that company is still functioning and in operation. The law requires that you do that at least once in a year. Now the question is, how has it become easier now? Well, it all goes back to the things we have talked about. First is leveraging on technology. Now, the way it used to be done is that you have to take those documents physically, hard copies, and go and file them at the CAC office. Now, with this law, with what the provision of this law, which has allowed electronic filing, it means that annual returns and indeed other returns you need to make at any time can be done electronically, can be filed electronically. You don't need to, it's not compulsory for you to take hard copies to CAC office. Now, like Israel also said earlier, you also need to be in mind, we need to also point out the fact that this law will call for a lot of improvements in technology, even on the part of CAC itself, for people to be able to take full advantage of these provisions. You have to have platforms, electronic platforms that are running, functional, and very efficient. We believe that CAC will rise up to that task, but the law has made that provision, which allows you to do it electronically. Now, one of the things you file, and which you are also required to do annually, is to file your audited accounts, which is has been audited by an external auditor. Now, the law says, like we said earlier, that annual audit is no longer necessary for small companies, as defined by Israel earlier, and companies which are yet to commence business are no longer required to file audited accounts, annual audited accounts under this new law. The law also allows you to keep your records electronically. That means that the registers which CAC said you must keep, register of members, of directors, and even the copies of the returns you have rendered to CAC of the annual returns, you have a choice. You have the alternative of keeping this electronically. But of course, that means that you also have to make provision for to keep them electronically. You also have to improve on the technology capacity of your own business so that you don't find a situation in which you lose documents. But that opportunity is there. So these are ways in which this law has made, this new law has made filing of annual returns and indeed other returns easier for businesses and especially for small businesses, small companies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Oluroko. So it's clear that we have to pay our annual returns and that under the new regime, it's a lot easier to do so. Thank you very much. So with this, I'll go back to Israel to ask, so what are the significant differences between the old and the new CAMA, and how can they be managed effectively to benefit SMEs?
Okay. All right. I mean, when we talk about the old and the new CAMA, again, what has happened is really an amendment to the existing law. So a good part of what existed, exists, continues to exist. But in the very, and I really can't help but say so, eloquent iteration of what has changed each time, and I think Rocco's interventions should be stringed together and maybe put, because then, for me, I think he's really articulated the issues in a very detailed way. so that people just sort of can relate to it, you know. And apart from, I mean, there are a number of, if you will, innovations that have been introduced that affect businesses everywhere. I mean, in terms of virtual meetings, in terms of virtual filings, in terms of, you know, all of those would affect all businesses. But the very specific ones that affect small businesses, you know, and I need to say this in maybe one or two ways, you know, are the ones that have been, you know, sort of articulated already in a lot of the presentations that Olurakpo made. And it's the very first time we're seeing it. It's the very first time we're seeing very specific provisions for SMEs. And because we didn't have it, it forced the situation. I mean, you have by official statistics, you have well over 50 million, you know, well over 50 million SMEs. But it's like a static block that really didn't have the potential to grow because there was no provision for it to grow. I mean, it was either you were small or you were big one time. But all the provisions that have been made now, the reduction in charges, and combined even with the Finance Act, which then says if your profit is within a certain limit, I think it's 25 million per annum profit, not even turnover, then you are tax exempt. There is now a real shot for small businesses to grow. And the intention is not for them to stay vibrant as small businesses, but to survive as small businesses and become job creators and value creators even ultimately. And there's a lot of, I mean, again, because we have to give small businesses the opportunity to grow and to become bigger businesses, medium-sized to bigger businesses here. Otherwise, we would need to wait for big businesses to come, you know, from wherever else into this establishment. So in that sense, I believe that the amended act has done us all a good service by just creating first that definition and a variety of provisions that allows small businesses to survive and to grow and potentially become bigger businesses that can support the economy. You know, and I should say something else, that, you know, some small businesses should really take advantage of what has happened. I mean, I don't think you can overemphasize it. If you think about or talk about access to finance, which again has been very well explained to all of us, especially post-COVID, the number of small businesses that are suffering, you know, that need access to finance from the financial institutions, from multilateral and all kinds of bilateral development entities and the rest. But if you don't exist on the formal platform, you may either not access it at all, or what you will access will be negligible and can't really go a long way to helping you survive. So I really want to encourage small businesses out there that there is now that opportunity for you to get on the formal platform. You can easily change your business registration into an incorporation. You can be the only director. You have a lot of opportunity to grow now. And if you keep proper records, you know, which is on the back of filings and the rest of it, then people also, there's also I don't know if this is an unintended consequences, but you exist on the formal platform. And even for visa applications, there are a lot of people who, if they need to travel for the sake of their business or even for personal and they need to get, you know, documentation from all over the place. But if you exist on the formal platform, you can generate those documentations yourself. You know, you can write letters of support that, you know, foreign embassies would recognize. So it gives you a lot of freedom.
Thank you very much, Israel. Thank you very much. I think the benefits of the Newcomer cannot be overemphasized, really. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think you've put that very succinctly, very clearly. So on this note, I will start taking questions from the live session. So this question is from Enohi Upebo. And the question is, if I have an LLC with 1 million share capital, can I upgrade to 10 million share capital on my own online? So this question, I will, Oluropo, please help us with this. Give us a response to Enohi's Elpebo's question, please. Should I take the question again?
Okay, go on. Yeah, take it again.
If I have an LLC with 1 million share capital, can I upgrade to 10 million share capital on my own online?
Okay, now that also first gives us opportunity to talk about one of the innovations, one of the amendments to the law. Now, under the old CAMA, a company is required to have what we call authorized share capital. Now, authorized capital is the maximum number of shares that you can create until you increase it. So it means that my share capital may be 10 million, but I create just 2.5 million. I just give us an example. I've issued just 2.5 million to people, to shareholders. Now, that means that 7.5 million is there as unissued shares, which I can issue from time to time when the need arises. But the law has changed that, has altered that you, under the present law, you don't have unissued shares that are just kept. You don't have authorized share capital. You issue the shares that you require at a particular time. So what you have is minimum issued share capital. Minimum issued share capital, and all of them are issued. So there is none that is unissued. Now, going to the question, now the law says that I think for private companies, 100,000, and then for public companies, 2 million as the minimum that can be issued. Now, the question that they ask is whether you can increase your share capital at any time, and the answer is a big yes. You can, under the new law. Now, what you do is to issue more shares. Now, the decision I'm trying to make is that under the whole law, you have to look at what your authorized share capital is, and then you have to stay within that limit. But now there's no authorized share capital. So when maybe you are doing business and you find out that your business is expanding and there is need, so you don't just create shares for fancy, just to be kept somewhere for future use. No, that is no longer the law. The position is that when the need arises, you find out that your businesses have grown and you want to create more shares. Of course, the law allows you to allot additional shares, as the needs of your business arise. So the answer to that question is yes, you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Oluropo. So what we are clear on is the fact that at any time you can actually upgrade your share capital. Thank you. So the next question, I'm sorry, Yisro?
No, I mean, I was just going to add something to what Oluropo said.
Go ahead.
Just in terms of, so the philosophy or the approach under the old CAMA essentially was, the management of the liability of the shareholders, right? That the authorized share capital is the extent of your liability. Okay, but from the point of view of investment, it then didn't work that much, because typically, even though you have, it says that you only have to pay up 25%. Typically, what people did was they allotted everything and maybe paid up about 25%. But if you then go to the market to try and raise capital, then sometimes it looks like, well, where's the opportunity for an investor to come in? So I think that this has really updated, okay, the company structure in order to be able to, for startups. And so especially with for any person young or old, who is engaged in a startup, this should be something to celebrate, because you can issue the bare minimum. And of course, even from a registration point of view, you know that part of the cost of registration is actually also stamp duties. So if you are really starting up, you can do your meager 100,000, get off the ground, and when you need to raise capital, you are not fettered by that sort of maximum cap issue. And then, of course, if you've taken an investment or about taking investment, you can in fact fund more shares. The corollary of this, again, and I hope this is not taken the wrong way, is that all the sort of constitutional documents, you know, outside of your filings become very critical, like founders agreement, shareholders agreement, because those are the places where you now be setting the rules for even how, because otherwise you can start a company and be diluted out of existence, but those are separate issues. Orok, what do you think?
Exactly. I do agree.
All right. Thank you very much, Israel, for throwing more light on that. Our questions are piling up, so we're going to move a bit quickly. So Israel, this one is for you. It says, talking about ease of doing business, is it easier to do business by having it registered and incurring associated expenses?
Okay. I don't know. Is my line freezing or is some other line freezing?
Or is it better not to? Many of which are. So this question is this question. Is it or not registering at all, since we're talking about SMEs?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you know, we're talking about SMEs, but there's also the concept of MSMEs, you know, and probably if there's anything before the M, which is micro, small, medium, and whatever else. But look, at the end of the day, and this is probably difficult to explain to anybody, that operating within the formal platform or formal economy has potential, has longer term, honestly, short, medium, longer term benefits than operating outside of the system. Okay, and increasingly so. I mean, we talked about the issue of access to finance. That's almost a no-brainer. Many people wouldn't have thought about it, but if you think about like the disruption we had in recent times, leading on to the lockdown and whatever else you have today, and then people will say, oh, but why are there bailouts for the big boys? Well, because the big boys are on the platform and everybody knows them. We are familiar with how they're creating value, how they're helping the economy, creating jobs and the rest. But, you know, as we say in normal small parlance, a chop alone, are likely to die alone. But that's with respect to the local economy. How about even international trade? You know, again, you know, a lot of things are driving. Again, if you're exporting something, you would realize that the documentation you're required to do, you know, the foundation for those documentations is incorporation and registration. So whether it is import, export, and whatever else you have, there's just a lot of benefit in, you know, and putting your system, your business on the formal platform, and then you can grow from there.
Thank you very much, Israel. I think it's clear registration is always better if you're an SME. So that's the way to go. The next question is for Oluropo. And the question, it says, can you address the issue of regulatory obligations of registered business names and incorporated companies? It says you will be surprised at the number of misconceptions out there with SMEs. For example, some believe only companies were liable to charge VAT and not registered business enterprises. So address the issue of the regulatory obligations, you know, sort of to draw a distinction between the business names and incorporated companies and what their obligations are.
You're muted.
Okay. Thank you. the difference between business names and incorporated entities, the first and the most important one, of course, is the fact that when you are incorporated, you have a legal entity that is separate from yourself. That is very, very important. You know, you have a legal entity that is a separate, what we call in law, a separate legal entity, different from the shareholders of the owners of that business. Now, that separate legal entity in the eye of the law has a life of its own. It's recognized as a separate person, a corporate person, different from you. It can own property, it can be sued and be sued in its own name, and it can exist perpetually. It has perpetual succession. And that also means that even when you are no longer around, you can transfer the ownership of that company to your beneficiaries, and then they can continue to run that company without you. And you will not have to face all the issues of estate issues that arise and when you are transferring assets and all that. Of course, most important also is the fact that what we call limited liability, which means that the liabilities, the obligations, and the person that asked the question used the words obligations of that company are separate from your own obligations. So if that company is indebted, you will not be called personally if you didn't sign a guarantee or something to come and pay the debts of that company. What the extent of your liability in that case will be what the shares that you have in that company. So that makes it easier to run a business. And like Israel said earlier, the important also is that whether you are dealing with banks or we are dealing with international partners, or you are doing international business, the fact that you are running your business through a company makes it a lot much easier for people to deal with you. Mm-hmm. So these are some of the differences between a business name and an incorporated company, and also the advantages you have when you have incorporated your company.
Okay, thank you very much, Oluwapo. Thank you very much. That question, the question you just answered was from Oladapo B. Now, the next question we're going to take was sent in by Emmanuel Bamidele Ojo and Israel. We're going to ask that you help us out with that. He says, can an existing limited liability company with 2 or 3 directors be converted to an SME with a single director?
Okay. That's reverse osmosis, literally, because what you would be doing is removing existing directors. And yeah, I mean, there are procedures for removing existing directors. They can resign their role and whatever as directors, or indeed they can, by an ordinary resolution of the shareholders, be removed. You know, provided you follow strict procedure, you give proper notice, and you also serve notice of their removal as directors and the rest. I'm not sure that the contemplation of the law was to transform that into maybe a tax-efficient entity, again, because I know people are thinking perhaps in those terms. But whatever it is, those are the things that can happen. And perhaps at the point of registration, just to comply with the provision of the law, you had those persons as placeholders, and you no longer require that as a provision of the law. then yes, and you can approach them and say, well, guys, thanks very much, but can you please sign these documents resigning your position as whatever else? I intend to carry on as a proper small business. And so that's a conversation you can have. So yes, it can be done following those various paths. But you know, something else Olurapo said, and I'm not sure it's necessarily within the remit of this conversation strictly, but let's just sort of drop it as a thought. You would not believe the number of people that have donated real estate to the Queen, even in a place like the UK and elsewhere in the world, because inheritance taxes and the rest were just impossible to meet. So indeed, in terms of, and quite frankly, even here, because again, as you encounter and deal with end-of-life issues, then you really have to wonder, is there any benefit in doing a bit of housekeeping very early? And one of the ways to do so is to incorporate a company and to own property assets through that and create and use it. And I thank you very much for bringing that up, to manage one's estates. I believe that there are potential tax benefits as well, but that's not my specialty. But probably we'll talk to somebody who knows more about that. But I thought I should just emphasize that as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Israel. Thank you for that clarification there. Okay, so the next question, Rocco, this is coming to you. And it says, after registration, after registration with the CAC, do I still need to register with the Ministry of Trade? And then, so it's from Bolaji Oladejo, and there are two questions really. It says, so after I've registered with the CAC, do I need to register with the Ministry of Trade and Investment? And it's asking if I register for different services, for example, ABC integrated services, and I'm starting a different line of business, also part of what I specified in my CAC form. Can I put in my signage, ABC catering services, ABC pharmacy, you know? So one is, I'm registered with CAC, do I also have to register with the Ministry of Trade and Investment? And then the second is, can I, having indicated different services in my CAC form, can I use the signage for those different lines of business? Thank you.
Okay, I'll take the first question. My answer is that it depends on your line of business. I won't use the Ministry of Trade as a typical example, it depends on the only place you may have to register. You may have to register with the regulator of your business. You may have to register with, if you are running a school, I'm sure you will need some certifications or approvals from the Ministry of Education that supervises the education sector. If you are putting up a health facility, you will need some approvals from the Ministry of Health, and so on and so forth. So but registration under the CAC is registering your company as a business entity. Now, if you are going to a particular line of business, you also need to know what are the rules and regulations that guide that area of business, and what's the other further or additional registrations that you will need. So after registering your business, or even probably before, because that may also affect the objects of your business, you need to find out what are the other rules. For example, using a bigger example, if you want to start a bank, for example, you will definitely need to register under CAC, but you also need to approach the Central Bank of Nigeria for what we call a banking license. You need the two. You cannot get a banking license if you are not a company, and if you are a company, you cannot do banking business without a banking license from CAC. That is the bigger one. But for even smaller sectors, I believe if your line of business is one that is unregulated and doesn't requires any approvals, you find out, and then you can just run with your business. But if it's a line of business that requires some further approvals and registrations, then you need to get those further approvals and registrations. So it's for you to make those inquiries depending on the business you want to do. The second question has to do with objects of a company and whether you can use the signage. What the law says presently is that you can specify the objects of your company in your memorandum of association, but the law also says that except something specifically prevented or you are restricted from doing a particular line of business, or that your articles of association, then you can do it. So it's a bit more elaborate than it used to be. Now, if you have a business that you are running and you have registered, yes, you can use the signage. But of course, you also need to bear in mind the laws related to trademark and all that. If you want your signage to be protected, you also make sure that you are using signage that somebody has used before. And if you want to have protection for your trademarks, you can also consider that. But of course, the answer against is yes, you can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oluroko.
And
yes, Israel, you wanted to say something about this?
Yeah, with specific reference to the Ministry of Trade, and it's interesting you raised trademark because I was hoping you would, and you did. So it's the Ministry of Trade, I think, that registers their trademarks. Yeah, exactly. So that's if you want to protect your trademark or register your trademark, then that's the Ministry of Trade. I think there's some other entity, I'm trying to remember now, that registers patents, and on and about. Definitely trademark is by the Ministry of Trade, but to emphasize the fact that's been pointed out, that what registration, and especially incorporation, does is that it gives birth to that business as a legal entity. You can't talk about the education, the upbringing, the training of a child that has not been born. So the first thing you do is you give birth to the child, and then we can start talking about everything else, all right, through to when they get married or whatever they did not do. And that's what happens, is that in the eye of the law, that business does not exist if it has not been incorporated under the corporate, under CAMA. And just as we have heard, once it is done, then it will be regulated by the specific regulators of your trade and industry. And in terms of signage, there are two things to probably think about there. One is you probably wouldn't come across as a serious entity if you have a signage that says XYZ Limited, catering services, pharmacy, and we really will start wondering what you're doing. And some professions or some businesses would not even permit you to combine it in that way. You certainly can't register an LLP and say IA and Sons, legal practitioners, and restaurant, and maybe hairdressing salon. I think the RPC will come after me the very next day if I attempted that. So those are just little things to do.
All right, thank you very much, Israel. Thank you very much, Oluroko. I think the takeaway from that is that you register first, and then once you are a registered entity, then you can seek additional registrations or approvals or permits, depending on the nature of business depending on your line of business. Okay, so we have a lot of questions, and I would like us to pick up a little speed so we can get in as many of those questions as possible. The next question, Israel, that is actually for you. And it is from Victor Olikiabo from FLSL Port Harcourt. He says, please, this new CAMA law, does it in any way apply to multinationals, governmental parastatals, and NGOs? Israel, can you speak to that, please?
Well, the general requirement is that you can't carry on business in Nigeria without being registered, unless if the minister in charge of trade grants you a waiver. So any entity that would operate here, either as a company, as an incorporated trustee, any kind of registration would need to be registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission, you know, in order for it to conduct business. And I don't know if there's any specific context to what they said, but that's the shorthand to that answer.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Israel. So the next question, Oluroko, goes to you. And this is from Onitilo Modupe from Ibadan. She says, how do I reserve a company name if the company is yet to start off to prevent other people from using the name? So this is for Rocco.
Okay.
Oluroko.
Thank you. Well, under the provisions of the law, you are, one of the processes is that you are allowed to reserve company, you can reserve a name for your company. Now, there's a process around that for a company you intend to incorporate. But what people do when they want to incorporate the company is also first to check that that name is available and to reserve that name. So when you reserve that name, what the CAC also checks is to make sure that that name is not the same name as a name that is already being used by an existing company, or so similar to a name that is already being used by an existing company as to create confusion or to deceive people that is the same company. Now, there's a provision also in the new Act which says that even when you have reserved name for a company that you intend to incorporate, the CAC during that period, between that period and when you actually incorporate that company, CAC has a right to withdraw that name or to cancel it. And that will only happen if the commission finds out what I said earlier, that that name is the same or similar to a name that is already being used by another company and that can create confusion about the two companies. So we can withdraw that name, which means we need to reserve another name. But generally, you can reserve name in the process of incorporating a company and before that company is incorporated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oluroko. So we can go ahead and reserve our the names of our SMEs, even without having started yet. We can go ahead and do that. The next question. Sorry, Israel, you wanted to say something?
Just for 60 days, you need to add that before they think they can.
For 60 days. Oh, yes, of course. Of course. It's not.
Yeah,
it's not in perpetuity. You can reserve it for a short period of time. 60 days.
To add that it's not indefinite. It's just part of the process for registering a company. It's not that you reserve a name and then go away and wait. There's a timeline. Thank you. That's very important.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. The next question is from Benga Makiwa, and he says, which of the tax authorities is responsible for collecting tax from a business whose name has been registered? So, Israel, this is your question.
What's it called now? The state. So the state where you operate. Okay, so the federal, the FIRS, that's the federal. Is that inland now? Tax services. Yeah, FIRS.
FIRS.
Is responsible for administering CITA, that's the Companies Income Tax Act. So where profit tax is due and payable by an incorporated entity, it is a taxable entity, because again you have to remember that a sole proprietor does not. I mean, a registered business name does not pay tax as a registered business name. You know. Tax is received in the hands of the owner, as indeed tax is payable in the hands of the partners in the event of a partnership. registered partnership under the old dispensation. I believe it will continue. But if you are then incorporated as a limited liability company, then you are liable to pay tax, profit income tax, and that is received by the Federal Inland Revenue Services. Payee or Personal Income Tax Act is administered. So CITA and I think VAT is administered by the FIRS, WHT and PITA as withholding tax for those that are liable to pay withholding tax. Sorry, withholding tax is given by the Federal Tax Authority as well, because that's advanced tax for CITA. So all of those are but certainly personal income tax is collected by the states. The state where you operate, the state where business operates from. I don't know, was I clear enough?
Yes, I think you did a good job of it. Thank you very much, Israel.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is from Anonymous. Anonymous, we require a name and a location, please. So the question is, how do you determine if you want your company to be registered by guarantee, to be limited or unlimited? Oluropo, this is for you. How do you determine if your company should be registered by guarantee or as limited or unlimited?
Well, the first thing you look at is I'll come to the question. First is to know what are the implications of using any of these options. If you registered as a limited liability company, like we explained earlier, it gives the company a separate legal personality, and it also creates what we call limited liability. That means that your liability to that company is limited to any amount that you have not yet paid with regards to your shares, to the shares you have acquired. Any amount that you have, maybe you are some shares been allotted to you and you are part paid or you are not paid a part of it, assuming the company is being wound up or the company is in debt or there's an obligation to be met, the only thing you have the amount you can be called upon to come and pay is that amount that is outstanding on your shares and no more. Now, if you register an unlimited liability company, it means that your liability, just as it says, are unlimited. So that means that you can be called upon to pay the entire obligations of the company. Now, if you register a company limited by guarantee, which is called incorporated trustees, that is used. You do that when you don't intend to run a business for profit making, not a business in the sense of making money. You want to go into charities, you want to give back to society, you want to run an NGO, which is not profit making, which is just for the purpose of advancing the cause of humanity in whatever way. Now, what you do is to register an incorporated trustee. Remember, guarantee means that what also separates your liabilities from that of the company, and what you can be called upon to pay is the amount of you have contributed, your contribution to which you have said you will pay if the company you have undertook to pay, if the company is being wound up. So it also has what we call separate legal personality. But so answering the question, it depends on what you want to do that would determine what type of company you are going to form. Definitely, if you want to run a business, a profit-making venture, I would advise you to preferably register a limited liability company, because you can have a business that is a legal entity that is separate from you and that can own property and all the advantages that can operate on its own, that can even continue to run after you are no more, after your lifetime. Now, that is good for it. But if you want to run a charity, you want to do something for the society, and you are not intending to make money from it, now you, of course, should preferably register a company limited by guarantee, which is also registrable under CAMA. So these are the options and the implications of those options. So you look at what you want to do, what it fits into it, and then you choose the option you want to use. I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much, Oloko. I think you've clearly explained the differences between this type of companies. So our people are able to make an informed decision on what to do. One last question for you.
To add, please.
Well, not necessarily to add. I mean, Olurokpo, in his very typical manner, has explained it as clearly as it is. But the one takeaway for me is talk to your lawyer in making these decisions. You know, you see, ease of business, it does not mean that all the lawyers have been consigned and dumped in the ocean. It's ease of registration and all of that. But honestly, there's nothing that is there to explain in a public forum that he hasn't explained. But even listening to him, and I take myself even out of body to be a non-lawyer for a moment, I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to speak to a lawyer. And this is what, again, a variety of innovations and, you know, whatever exists today to create better access to to lawyers. Let me put it that way. You know, and I don't want to use this platform to push anything, but I'm saying those kinds of innovations, innovative platforms exist, and people should feel free to take advantage of them and talk to their lawyer.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. You have done excellently. We will be coming to the end of the live session shortly, and I would like you to please give us, in 1 minute, give us a takeaway, one piece of advice that you want every SME represented here to, the takeaway for them, something that you want them to have. So, Israel, please, you can start. In 1 minute.
In bits and pieces, I believe I have said some of the things that that I wanted to say, one of which is that the fact that you're an SME today does not mean you should remain an SME forever. The opportunity now exists by the various innovations in the laws for you to thrive, to survive, to thrive, and to become bigger and contribute to the nation. I mean, if Nigeria ever needed businesses, that would, because the challenge with jobs is not going to, government cannot employ any number of people. I mean, if you think about population and all of that. So now more than any other time in our history as a people, we need businesses to survive and to thrive. And there is help for you to both survive and thrive and contribute to your nation. Even as as this is done foreshadowing the 60th anniversary of the country, I'd like to say, please get your business on the platform, take all the help you need, and then grow and contribute even to society again. Thank you very much to FirstBank, the SME desk, for putting this up. It's been a privilege to be part of this, and I hope that the audience have benefited immensely from whatever little thing we will contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Israel. Thank you so much. Olurokpo, your closing words, word of advice for our SMEs.
Thank you, Ayo. I cannot agree more with Israel. My message will be, take advantage of this law. get as much information as you can, and also speak to your lawyer, like Israel said earlier. Get information from professionals. The law has not said you should not get professional help because there are people who have been trained to do certain things. Get as much information as possible. Take advantage of the law. One of the good steps you have taken for the good people who are here with us is registering for this webinar, because you are trying to get knowledge, you are trying to get education. And once you get this information, make use of them, make use of the law, take advantage of the law to enhance your business. I also want to thank Yayo for being a great moderator, and thank Israel wonderfully well for being such a great co-panelist, and I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Luroko. Thank you, Israel. There you have it. The experts have spoken. It is clear from everything we have heard today that the passage of CAMA has brought with it significant improvements in the Nigerian corporate and commercial business industries, particularly for SMEs. We have to apologize because Dr. Jumoke Oduole was unable to attend due to unforeseen circumstances that were outside her control. We have come to the end of the webinar, and thank you for attending. So to check the health status of your business and to request for a business coach, please visit SMEConnect.FirstBank.Nigeria or send a mail to SMEdesk@FirstBankNigeria.com. If you want to listen to this webinar again, or perhaps you joined in a bit late, it will be available on the SME. It will be available on the SME platform. You can also, for updates on our SME propositions and information about our upcoming webinars, please join our SME Connect community at SMEConnect.FirstBankNigeria.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at FirstBank Nigeria on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. It was a pleasure having you here with us today, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. From all of us at FirstBank, we wish you a happy 60th Independence Anniversary. Thank you.